Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Links in the description to the video. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You'll also get blog posts on what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, and work in progress animated GIFs. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up my books there. And there are book flip through videos on the homepage of my YouTube channel if you want to check those out before buying. Links to all these in the description for the video. So head on over and check those out. And we're going to be picking up right where we left off last week. Let's see here. Hey, Omar's in the chat. How you doing, Omar? Good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Alrighty here. So what we have been doing is some creature design. And I kind of wanted to dip into or expand on sort of the idea that I had last week about trying to design, instead of designing these creatures separately, to design them all in sort of a group shot. So what I want to do here is take all of these visible elements that I have, and let's merge these. Then I'm going to do what I've been trying over the past year or two when I'm doing a bunch of concept work, is to just take a whole page of thumbnails, shrink them down, throw them in the upper corner, and then just keep working around them. So maybe make that a little bit bigger so I can see some of that. This way I can refer to those other images while working out new ideas. Let's see. I see Byron in the chat. It says, hey, people. Hey, Byron. How you doing, man? Thanks for coming by. Thanks for dropping in. How's your week going? Getting anything creative done? This has actually been, unfortunately, a highly unproductive week for me. I got like zero writing done and very, very little artwork done. Most of the artwork I got done was figure drawing related to classwork. And I honestly could have skipped that and tried to be more productive on the comic book or illustration front. But I find that the figure drawing is like my happy place. It's kind of what allows me to chill out and unwind. And I really felt like I would have preferred that versus trying to force myself to grind on the comic stuff. So I'm kind of re-looking at the first image, not the first, but the image that I had up here where I've got sort of a group shot of characters. And it's interesting because when you're trying to do a whole group shot of monsters, I mean, I guess it's not different than doing a whole group shot of humans, in the sense that humans all tend to have, you know, for the most part, we've got 4 limbs and a head and a torso. We tend to have pretty similar shapes, whereas with these creatures, it's trying to make them all read while at the same time having unique monstrous features. So I'm starting this time with a low horizon. And just to change things up, I'm kind of messing with the composition that I created before. So this time I'm sort of taking the largest monster, putting it in the background, and its whole body is like this, kind of filling up the screen. And I guess what I'm going to try and do is start by just taking the shapes of their heads and using their heads as markers for where they're going to be. So let's say that I decide right around here, the horizon line is going to be about where their hips are. Let's see here. Byron says, don't worry. Could have been worse on productivity. Could have had COVID like me. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Wow. I hope your recovery is going well and that didn't lay you on your ass too badly. I am sorry to hear that. And I hope that you don't suffer any long-term effects. I hope you recover quickly. That really sucks. So yeah, I guess things could always be worse. I should quit my bitch and count my blessings. So I haven't even decided which ones I'm going to put in which position, but for some reason I figured they've got to go somewhere. I'm thinking about turning this creature here in the front into one of the death creatures, which are really, they're harpies, but they're just, harpies of death. Let's see here. Byron says, I'm good now for the most part, but I was definitely feeling it for a day or two. Thanks for the worry, though. Well, I'm just happy to hear that you're back to mostly full functioning. Normally, I know it's bad form for someone to eat during a live stream or a podcast, but I have a tiny bit of a cookie I've been eating with my my coffee. I just want to finish the last little bit of it, so I'm gonna just sit here, have a little ASMR, quietly chew while I draw. Byron says, "Where's the Jeremy drawing comics and mukbang stream?" I don't even know what mukbang is, unless that's more about my snot and and mucus, or maybe mukbang was supposed to be mucus and it tried to autocorrect. I have been fortunate that as I'm knocking on wood here, over the past month or two, I haven't been as snotty and mucusy, but spring hasn't sprung yet. It's usually that spring season and that late summer season when the allergies really flare up. So I've been lucky as of recent months. I'm trying to figure out, in the background, there's a giant storm creature who I guess might be even bigger than the sea monster. That's kind of the sea monster with the flaming head, Typhon. Let's see here. Okay, I learned something new today. Byron says mukbang is a type of video stream where people eat, usually a lot of food. Well, man, I am not the candidate for that because if anything, I'm trying to eat less and less as I get older because I find that, like, you know, the food comas last longer. The pounds stick to you, and me cramming my face is just not a good look for longevity. So, but I did not know that there was a name for that. I just thought ASMR was just anytime you're doing some sort of auditory simulation or stimulation. And, hearing the sound of a pencil scraping across a paper or paint on a paintbrush on a canvas, I can see that being soothing. I can see a lot of different tactile sounds being soothing. The sound of chewing does not seem like it would be particularly pleasing or soothing. But I guess maybe the mukbang is probably more about the visuals necessarily than the audio. Let's see. Oh yeah, he says, I'm not gonna lie, it's an odd genre. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would have to, pun intended, say it sounds like an acquired taste. Amar in the chat. Hey, Jeremy, and good Sunday to all. Good Sunday to you as well, sir. Thank you for popping in. Oh, yeah. Byron says mukbang is a type of ASMR. And he says it's a Korean word, but I don't know the exact translation for it. I think that's actually kind of cooler when there's just words where they're like, you don't have this in your language. You're like, whatever it is, it's like, no, that it's like you can come up with something close to it, but I like those things where the word, the American translation is even funnier or more ridiculous because there's just like no, there's nothing that you have that even comes close to what this is. This is one of those things where I'm kind of tempted to start blocking things in just to create some strong silhouettes to draw against, but I'm also fighting that urge so that I can keep this sketchy and loose. And I haven't really, the point of me doing these character designs in a group shot is that hopefully by having them as a coordinated team, it might inspire a little bit more creativity in terms of trying to give them more distinct silhouettes. And I could do the same thing by simply just drawing a lineup and having them all posed against each other. But I just wanted to try this and see if the narrative fun of designing a group shot might give me ideas. I'm thinking about taking this harpy creature And maybe its face is inside of a mask. So you don't actually see its face. Let's see here. Byron says, the closest translation I can find is literally eating show. Oh, well, there you go. Mukbang, eating show. And I still have the reference that I had here. Originally, all this was me trying to work out the famine character and trying to mix a skeleton and a locust. Maybe I will put them. Because I'll tell you what's bothering me is I just feel like this creature that I drew over here on the right edge, yes, it's a harpy, but you can't really tell it's a harpy because of the way that I've laid it out. I need to see more of its body. And that also means I've got a couple of flying creatures, which I hadn't really marked that off. Because creatures that can fly, I should position them in the air. So we'll say that death will be flying. And it's weird, like death will be flying and famine will be flying. Famine will be flying because famine is a locust. Death will be flying because death is a harpy. Chaos will be flying because chaos is a cloud in the sky. And I'm making a point to mark these because that kind of establishes where their position in the layout should be. So maybe Rage, which I don't think I'm actually going to make Rage a bull, but in Greek mythology, the character is actually is a woman. And I think, now that I've gotten really into finding creatures that represent each of these, maybe it would be kind of nice to have a character that is just a plain humanoid human. And I guess I'm going to give her a spear just to give her a weapon. And right now, I'm going to have the spear angled like this. Because honestly, I feel if anything, the weapon should be angled into the composition, angled somewhere this way. But I don't know enough about where I'm going to place the other elements to effectively have her pointing at something that makes sense. Something that would somehow signal, either lead the eye in a direction I want it to. So this position, the angle that she's holding the spear, the fact that it's a spear instead of a sword, all of these things are subject to change. These are just marks to get me started. Which this is a lot of what thumbnailing is just making marks to get started, saying, all right, let me put something in here so I can start moving things around. Let's maybe have her skirt coming down the front. Yeah, originally I was thinking about making her a bull. But I want her hair to be kind of straggly and all over the place because she's rage. She's angry. I mean, I just want her to look pissed off. And Amar says it may also be a good to look at other mythos if that is your path, unless Greek is your avenue. He says there are so many mythos-based cultures that give way to more choices. Well, in this particular story, it's just about Greek mythology. Like I know in Sandman, one of the things, one of the main things in that story is that all mythologies exist or coexist. They've got Greek mythology next to Japanese folklore, next to like Thor and Odin, like all these different mythologies and Native American mythologies. All those things exist simultaneously. The story that I'm doing is specifically about Greek mythology, but that doesn't mean I can't look at other mythologies and inspire and take inspiration for my versions of the Greek myths. So, yeah, there's always room to crib from others. Always room for that. Let's see here. I think I'm going to move this one. See, what's weird is Typhon is a giant sea monster, but even with that, I kind of want to take the creature that is disease is going to be like a giant diseased rat monster, kind of like a mutant rat. Imagine if you mix Splinter from the Ninja Turtles with like a kaiju. Well, no, kaiju would be much too big. This is more maybe the size of like the Rhino from Spider-Man. Make those sharp front teeth almost like daggers. But for some reason, I like the idea of this creature being super tall. Come here. Grab this. Just slide it down there. Being super tall, but getting its head low to the ground. It's screaming at the viewer. Let's see here. Amar says, I tend to like the African diaspora because they have the most diverse. And then the Asian diaspora. No, I think that those are all rich cultures to pull from. And what's funny is, if anything, it's not so much that I have a lack of things to pull from. Right now, the biggest problem I have is that there's too many creatures and too many different mythological elements to pull from. And it's more about winnowing those elements down to the ones that fit the story best, because the creatures that I have picked to be the villains of this story have changed over like 3 different drafts of the script, because there are so many different creatures that that could represent the villains of the story. So I've had like very wild. That's one of the other things that is making this thing take so long in the writing, which is still ongoing. It's just simply the fact that it's a deep bench, and there's not necessarily one way that my story could play out. Not just one set of villains, not just one, like there's multiple character arcs, multiple climaxes for the same characters that could work. And they aren't necessarily better or worse. They're just different versions of the story. And the challenge is just picking one and committing to it, because another thing about creativity is that nature that we have of second guessing ourselves. Somewhere in my notes, I think I have a sketch of this guy. Let me see here. Just looking to see if there's any extra layers in this that are turned off. No. Well, somewhere out there is a character sketch. That particular monster that was working for me, and it seems to have vanished. All right, well, instead of running through all of that, let's just continue here. Because otherwise I could just keep looking and looking and looking and not finding. Let's see here. Let's see HJ Mars in the chat. How you doing, HJ? Thanks for popping in here. Picked up where we were last week, just sketching out some character designs, some monster designs. And Amar says, but the world, even though he was not the best person, I tend to like H.P. Lovecraft creatures because of their abstractness, which makes them more scary and mysterious. Yes, yeah, he would be, as we modern contemporaries say, problematic, but his horror stories and his creatures are fantastic. Let's see here. Byron says, file organization, my old nemesis. And it's odd for me because usually I am very good about keeping things organized, and I do have a whole folder just for this comic where I'm just putting all of the visual development, and that folder, even that will be separate from the folder for the actual comic pages, which is why I find it so weird that I can't find the sketch that I'm thinking of. But I knew I sketched it a long time ago, and it might actually be in my main illustration folder because I've got a digital sketchbook on this tablet. I've got a folder for illustrations, and then I've got a folder that's just a digital sketchbook for when I'm just sitting and doodling and doing whatever. And I'm betting it's in one of those folders. But the time we have here is precious, and if I really wanted to have that, I should have found it before we started streaming because I don't want to waste the time that we could be sitting here drawing and talking, while I'm just looking through folders. So that is my bad. And oddly enough, sometimes you look for things and you can't find them, and you end up working from memory, and you end up drawing what was the memory of the sketch instead of the actual sketch, and you get something better. Although I will say I want to find a piece of reference, and I don't seem to have it handy. So I'm going to look up something and send it from my phone. I'm going to look up Greek masks because I wanted to try the idea of giving the harpy that represents death, to give her a death mask. Let me see. but not a death mask like the mask that they make a mold or a plaster mask of your face before you die, and then like you get buried with that over your face. I'm thinking about just like a Greek theatrical mask, but like making it one of death. Let's see here. Well, nothing that I see really fits what I'm looking for. A lot of what I see are actually Italian Venetian theater masks. Although I do see something that might help. So let me send this over. There we go. And bring this into the file. Not particularly large. Let me put this over here. It's kind of next to where we're working. So the reason why I wanted to look at this little mask here is because I'm just simply thinking, what if I were to take something that is a simple face mask like that, but convert it to something that is a little bit more horrific? Like, what if you were to make it the Greek personification of death? What would that face look like? Something like that. Let's see here. Oh, turned away for a second. A bunch of people popped in. Good to see y'all. Martin's in the chat, says, hey. Good to see you, man. Thank you for popping in. HJ says, not bad, Jeremy. How's your weekend been? I've been catching up on rest. I have not been as productive as I should be, but I've been, it's not even like I've been burning the candle at both ends. I've just been feeling exhausted and worn out for the past couple of weeks. And I was like, I need to just spend more time just resting. Like, go to bed early, sleep in late on days when I'm not at work, and just trying to recharge so that I can, get back to my regular schedule. So I would say it's good from a physical health standpoint, but it's bad from that constant gnawing sense that most creative people have that we're not getting enough done. So I've been kind of giving myself permission to not be hyper productive as much as I'd like. And that's really, really hard because I do not want to give myself that permission. I don't know if this face will be scarier if the eyes are neutral versus the eyebrows pointing up or pointing down. And I also am thinking it might be scarier if they are completely black but have little dots inside. So I may just give it a little dot of white. Oops. That's too big. It's creepier. Let's see here. And James is in the chat. Says, I'm here now. Fun with drawing and entertaining ideas. Not sure what's going on in that shot, but I am curious about it. You'll never know what kind of references you'll find. Well, I am continuing with that idea of creature design. I basically just picked up where I was last week with designing the creatures by putting them in a group shot together instead of drawing them in a lineup. And this creature, the creature that represents death in my story, is basically a harpy. And I thought it would be kind of cool to give her a death mask. So I found an image of a Greek mask. And now I'm just sort of trying to design a head to go around it. And I don't know why, but I want to give her a crown of black roses. I mean, yes, it very much, resonates with the Jesus imagery. You can't help but see someone with a crown of thorns and think of that. But I still haven't seen that movie Midsommar, but I think of the pictures on all the posters of Florence Pugh crying with that very colorful, garland of roses around her head. I'm thinking this is something kind of like that. Let me move this up a tiny bit because I think I'm just going to merge that to this layer. Normally I like to keep the reference layers separate from the drawing layers, but in this case, I'm just like, screw it. It's in there. It's part of it. Let's see here. James says, kind of like the eyes peeping out from the shadows. I'm thinking of the Mexican Day of the Dead. Yeah, you know what? See, and that goes back to what Amar was saying earlier about, even though my story's set in ancient Greece, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't look at other mythologies to pull from. And I think there is definitely a Sugar Skull feel to this. So now that I've got sort of what I imagine that head looking like, and all of that was because I started sketching this character basically floating in the air in this corner, and me not knowing what I wanted the head to look like. Which is odd because I go through all of that, and the head that I just sketched out is really just this tiny wreathed skull mask. Might not even be able to tell it's a mask from here. Let's see here. So I'm just blacking in the silhouette of Typhon's head because he's kind of getting lost in the wings over here. Yeah, I might need to play with this composition a little bit so that instead of having that head right there, I may have to move the harpy over just enough that it's sort of like giving Typhon's head enough room to really be defined. Give him a little bit of room and put the rest of his head there. You can still have them touch a little bit, but just giving his head just enough space. Let's see, and the other problem, and this is the reason why designing in a group is good, because it's going to force me to make changes to the other character design, is how do I make this creature with his head surrounded in flames distinct from the cloud that just has dark eyes over here on the right hand side, because that's just going to be sort of a cloud behind. And yeah, it's easy enough to just do it or to render it in grays as opposed to black to push it into the background. But drawing at this scale, they look a little too similar. I mean, to be honest, with all these vertical characters, I'm almost wondering, with all these flying characters, I'm wondering if this might lend itself better to a vertical composition versus a horizontal. So let's see here. So you've got disease, death, chaos, rage. So I guess famine and stillbirth are the only ones that really need to work into this image. It might be creepy to actually have stillbirth just as sort of a creepy baby that's like blue purple with like glowing eyes. The transformation that I have it make during the story to me is truly disturbing, but I think here, starting it off in that early stage, might be something that it sets the stage for where the creature goes without creepy enough, without necessarily spoiling the over-the-top creepiness that I have planned later on in the story. It's a very crowded shot. So HJ asks, what are the main mythologies you're taking inspiration from? So all of these monsters are from Greek mythology. So originally I was looking at gods of the different aspects that I'm looking at: disease, stillbirth, famine, rage, death. The problem being is that the gods that represent these, for some of them, like death, there is Thanatos. So there is a Greek god of death. But when you get to some of the other ones, for instance, famine, more than anything, is actually controlled by Demeter, who is the goddess of the harvest. And Demeter, I'm trying not to have the Olympian gods play roles as they very much can be villains. The Olympian gods are assholes. But I don't want this story to necessarily be about them as the villains of this story. So, when you look at something like earthquakes, one of the original things that I was going to have as the god of earthquakes as one of the villains. Well, Poseidon is the god of earthquakes, so I can't really use him the way that I plan to in the story. So I was looking at different monsters or creatures that are aspects of these ideas. So all of them have some relation to Greek mythology. And it was originally, oddly enough, I was planning to have the famine locust flying in the background. Instead, I've got the locust holding the baby here. By the way, I was curious if anyone here is a fan of the Venture Brothers, because I've been reading this amazing book from Dark Horse Comics on the making of the Venture Brothers, and they just go episode to episode. It's almost like a written director's commentary, and it is really fun to hear just the process of them. Like, whereas I'm very structured and researched and working in all of these details, they are very much just sort of go with the flow, throwing in everything with the kitchen sink. And it is fun to read about a creative team that has such a different process. So usually in my newsletter, I'll put in, that's one of the sections of the newsletter is just the, what am I reading? What am I watching? What are the things that are getting me going or that I'm excited about? And I'm really enjoying this Venture Brothers book. So I'll have sort of a more detailed write-up in either next month or the month after's newsletter, because I'm still probably maybe only a third of the way through the book. Let's see here. Yeah, HGA says the Olympians are pretty much all terrible. It's really cool how you're doing a Greek myth story without emphasis on the gods. It's unique. Well, thank you. I mean, the Greek gods do very much play a part in the story, and they actually play a pretty significant part, but it's more sort of the fact that there's villains in the story, but the Greek gods play the villains of, they've set up a system by which humanity is caught in their stupid games, which is in line with most of what I've read of Greek mythology, is that most of the horrible things that happened, excuse me, are either due to petty squabbles between the gods, or the gods just, taking vengeance on humans for mistakes or misunderstandings. They're just being petty. And in my story, that's kind of the role that the gods take, is like all of these horrible things that end up happening are happening because the gods are just jerks. So they're still villains. They're just not the surface apparent villains. It's interesting that there's a death mask that I have for death, because I was showing a friend of mine my preliminary sketches for this creature. And one of the things that we were going over, oh wait, it's in this file. I think you guys have seen this. When I was just designing him just purely as a locust and not even humanized, and me trying to figure out what face was scarier. And this one, definitely, just the fact that I've got a creature with a death mask, but then I've even tried to make this insect's face look very skull-like. Ooh, that's too big. Let's see here. Byron says, bless you. Thank you. And HJ says, I've heard of the Venture Brothers, but I haven't sat down to watch it yet. It's I think it's 7 seasons plus a direct-to-video movie that wrapped up the whole series. And it's a shame because it's not a series that I feel like they gave it a good ending. They wrapped it up with a nice ending that does leave the world open-ended, but I don't want it to end. It's a great show, and it's a show that could go on forever. It just has so much more left in the world, which, I mean, I guess it's a good thing. It's not staying until you've worn out your welcome, but I mean, hell, I don't think that they wanted it to end. They were working on season 8 when they found out they were canceled, but at least HBO gave them a direct-to-video movie to wrap up the series with. So that's something. But I enjoyed it. I think all the seasons are great. I mean, if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, imagine Johnny Quest meets Rick and Morty instead of Back to the Future. And I will say it's more action-oriented than comedy-oriented. So it is a funny show, but it is a funny show that has a lot of, well, no, because Rick and Morty has some pretty cool fight scenes. I think that Rick and Morty just sometimes they lean a little bit into, yes, they get the ridiculous sci-fi stuff, but it can still have a little bit of sitcom humor. Whereas this, when they are not doing the fights, it feels more like they're doing nerdy, as opposed to sitcom. They're doing more of, Johnny Quest satire. That's kind of the original inspiration for it. Let's see here. And HJ says, Demon Jiminy Cricket paints a wonderful picture. Well, thank you. That right there. That's why I wrote the phrase down, is because sometimes in words, you put down what it is you're trying to capture in the picture, and then it gives you a North Star to pursue. Well, we are already at an hour here, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. I'm going to draw for like another 10, maybe 15 minutes before we wrap up, just because I want to, I don't know, see where this goes. I mean, to be honest, part of me, this first pass feels like, okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 creatures in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Okay. Because there's a different villain per chapter plus a bonus villain. So I have all of the creatures that are in the story here. And I don't feel like this is a particularly strong layout. But like I said, the whole point of doing something like this is to give me a starting point from which to work. So now I have a piece, a rough sketch that it's fine that I'm not happy with it. But what's more important is that this rough sketch is a starting point to say, okay, what is the better version of this? And from here, I can go in and start moving pieces around, playing with different compositions, more vertical compositions. That's actually the thing I want to try next. Like I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, what would happen if I start with the sky in the background? I'm kind of blacking out a lot of the detail that I had put in here because originally my goal for this was I wanted to work on their silhouettes. So I want to see what happens if I go in and just black everything out or black out large chunks of it, large chunks of detail. Let's see here. Amar says, I saw your post and I'm familiar with Venture Brothers. It felt like some superhero knockoffs. I got more into Archer series for some reason. They definitely have there's a shared DNA between Archer and Venture Brothers. In fact, the guy who does the voice of Archer, he does the voice of not one of the main characters, but he does the voice of a recurring villain in later seasons. And he's really hilarious. It's like a really weird, it's a shape-shifting demon god. And just hearing it with Archer's voice is hilarious. And I think it actually came out probably maybe before Archer started. I mean, the season that he's on. It was either before Archer started or right around the time that Archer began. But both of them came out of Adult Swim because Archer, before Archer, there was a show called Frisky Dingo that was on Adult Swim. And that show is hilarious. That is absolutely worth checking out. And that's what if Archer, instead of being a spy, was a superhero? What if Archer was Batman? That's what Frisky Dingo is about. But more than that, it's about his arch enemy. And then before Frisky Dingo was C-Lab 2021, which was basically a sitcom taking an old animated series called C-Lab 2020 and then reusing the animation but adding new dialogue and doing it as a weird sitcom of what was an action underwater animated series. And all of those, the point is that they all came from Adult Swim. So there's definitely a shared DNA between Archer and Venture Brothers. I think it is worth, like, I've got, I think the first 4 or 5 seasons on DVD. It definitely worth checking out. But more importantly, the book gives you insight into what it's like to build an animation series from the ground up with very limited resources and a small team working on it. Byron says, sometimes you just feel in your groove. Thank you. I am feeling my groove a bit today. I mean, part of that is, I think, getting the rest that I've been trying to get, is that this is the first time in a while that I actually have felt reasonably rested. James says, words you're trying to capture. What about abstract ideas or intangible things? I can see what you're doing with chaos and rage. Yeah, that's well, I mean, the magic of comics is that, you know, with a picture being worth 1,000 words, sometimes you do things and you sketch out ideas that you could never, like, it would take paragraphs and paragraphs to describe it properly. And by the opposite token, sometimes you take something that you couldn't even necessarily physically imagine, and you come up with a word for it or a phrase, and that phrase, instead of showing the thing, sometimes even with the you want to show, don't tell, describing something in words can be, in a visual medium, can be that much more powerful than just revealing and showing whatever the thing is. Or maybe there's no drawing that could ever be as powerful or dark or twisted as the verbal description that you give it. And while people might be bummed out that they don't get to see the thing, the power of leaving things to people's imaginations is just as true in comics as it is in any other form. I mean, if you think about X-Men comics, or particularly Wolverine comics, yeah, there's lots of cool shots of him stabbing his claws through people. But think about all of those things that they use in the X-Men many times, and definitely in Wolverine, where you just saw the silhouette of his claw, have his hands slashing, and the panel is red, and there's blood splatter, and that's all you see. And you don't know what he did, but all you know is he chopped somebody the hell up. You know, that kind of thing of knowing how to leave things to people's imagination, even in a visual medium, is very, very powerful. Let's see here. Amar says, I remember C-Lab. They had a lot of weird animated series on Adult Swim, especially at night. Yeah, I mean, hell, Rick and Morty is one of those weird Adult Swim series. They continue to put out some weird, strange shit. And that's kind of what I love about Adult Swim, is that what I'm drawn to is that they're doing things that you're not going to find anywhere else. The humor is offbeat and it's strange, and sometimes it doesn't completely make sense. And I like a world in which I'm seeing things I don't 100% understand. Because if something is too much of following the beats of like the tropes of a genre, if it's too, I mean, yes, you need to clearly define what you're doing. But if it's too much of just following the bump, then it just becomes another boring action show or a boring drama or crime or horror story. When you give me something and I'm looking at it, I'm like, what is this? I lean into stuff like that, where I don't quite know where it is, or where it switches genres midstream. Like, if you guys have ever seen the Denzel movie, Deja Vu, it starts out as a crime drama, and in the end, it is still a crime drama, but it radically shifts genres in the middle of the movie. And by the time you know what type of movie you're watching, it's too late. And you're like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. And for me, I mean, I could see somebody who is not a fan of genre stories watching that movie and getting pissed halfway through. But for me, I was like, oh, snap. Like, I loved it. So, yeah, that is my particular taste, is I like things that are strange and surprise me. So let's see here. James says, yeah, showing and telling. Byron says, that's the great thing about comics. It's both illustration and writing. You should make use of both to their fullest extent. I completely agree. HJ says, Rick and Morty is so weird, but it works. Yeah, I mean, and that's honestly, when people talk about there being shows, so many shows on TV that suck, or that there's nothing good to watch. I think that you have to take the chance of making something that isn't going to work in order to do something that feels fresh and original. You can do something that will satisfy an audience and it'll last for 2 seasons or 3 seasons, and then it's like, all right, we've kind of done everything and that's it. But I think that when you get a show that, if you're going to make it feel fresh right out of the gate, you're going to lose some people because they're just like, I don't know what this is. It's a lot of people do not have an appetite for confusion. A lot of people do not have an appetite for, I don't know how I feel about this. Whereas that is what is exciting to me. You know, when I can clearly see where a story's going, I'm less interested. Sometimes if the performance is great, if the actors are great, if the writing, the actual dialogue is great, you can give me a show that is very by the numbers and I'm on board because I'm just it's like going to a really, really good steakhouse. You know, it's like steak is not new. You've had steak for thousands of years, but a really well prepared steak, you know, you don't need to surprise me. Just give me the good steak. As opposed to going to another country and saying, sea urchin. Okay. Never thought about eating sea urchin before. Let's see. You know, that's the way I look at it. And a great steak versus, you know, having sea urchin with eel sauce. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I would try both. But let's see here. Amar says that's what was great about old school cinema, like Hitchcock films and other filmmakers like Fritz Lang, which, by the way, I have been meaning to work my way through all of Hitchcock's films. Because, I mean, I've only seen Rear Window, I've seen Psycho, I've seen Vertigo. I think maybe I've seen like 1 or 2 other. Oh, wait, I think I've seen Lifeboat. And I think maybe like 1 other Hitchcock film. And I've been meaning to make my way through his entire... North by Northwest. That's the other one. So, I mean, I've seen some of his most popular films, but I honestly feel like he's one of those directors that it's worth working your way through every single thing that I've never seen Rope. I've never seen Dial M for Murder. I mean, I've never seen... I don't know. There's tons of Hitchcock films. And I feel like I could learn a lot just as a storyteller by watching them. And Fritz Lang, all I've seen is Metropolis, which was great. But yes, that I agree with what you're saying. It just reminds me that there's more for me to go back and dive into. I'm not done with Hitchcock by a damn sight. Amar says they use framing, lighting, and pacing to make you think more than just putting everything out there for you to see. Well, you know, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of noir film, where you've got characters sinking into the shadows, or even if you have a character and you're doing a close-up of them, you'll do a close-up of them, and, you know, most of their face is lit, but then the sides of their face will disappear into the darkness and the shadows. It'll just be a perfectly framed face in like a pool of blackness. You know, I think that just the visual composition and lighting in noir films is fantastic. I have a book on the topic called Painting with Light, which I have not read yet. I buy a lot of books when I hear interviews with people talking about them. And I think I heard Brian Michael Bendis talking about the book, so I picked it up. But it's a great book actually about lighting in cinema. It's not a comics or a storytelling book per se, but it's on my list. I bought it a long time ago and I still haven't read it yet. Amar says, I like Deja Vu. I thought it was a sci-fi mystery that ended up being about time travel. Yeah, I was trying to be clever about not necessarily saying that it was a time travel movie, but I mean, that doesn't spoil the movie. But I think it is interesting to go in thinking that it's just a straight up crime thriller, and then you find out that it's, you know, a time travel story. James says, I see what you mean about gory, discrete shots, gory discretion shots. But you know what? It's not even necessarily about gore or violence. It can be something where, like, you're seeing, you know, like Amar was talking before about H.P. Lovecraft and his eldritch gods. It's about having a creature or a horror that's so big that our brains can't comprehend it. And maybe you've got a pen where all that comes onto the screen is like, you see a giant tentacle, and that's like the fingertip of one corner of this giant, massive creature. and not even showing the thing because there's nothing you could put on the page that would convey the enormity or the terror or the sheer madness of this creature. Like the idea of doing a drawing. Let's say that you've got a comic book about a painting that drives people mad. You look at it, you go insane. I think that the story is stronger if you never see the painting. Or maybe you, at the end of the story, you get to see the signature or one corner of the painting. And the idea is that at the time that it happens, the story is so weird that like it implies that just by reading this comic, it hasn't made you insane because you haven't seen the whole thing, but it's made you question the nature of reality. And you're like, huh. See that right? And honestly, that right there, that's a story. I might still write that. I mean, I'm not saying if you wanted to write it, you go ahead, write it, draw it, do it. But that's just saying that right here off the top, to me, that's like a short story that I would be interested in doing at some point. But I would need to really pare that down. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that Lovecraft would do. He loves doing stories about things that drive people crazy and giant eldritch creatures. I mean, I think I may actually be cribbing from a story about because I know that he does stories about paintings. Like there's one about a guy who's painting this subterranean monster, and it looks so realistic. It's because he's actually found these monsters and he's painting them. But he loves doing stories about things that drive people crazy. Let's see here. And Amar says Rick and Morty was even worse when it started by its creators on YouTube. And he says it's amazing how crude it was and where it began to what it is now. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that the Venture Brothers book talks about is how when they made the pilot was super janky. And, they made a pilot and then from there on, they were just trying to improve it. But a lot of times the things that get these shows, get them on the air, very, very different, very rough what they make and get sold to a studio to develop. James says, I don't mind mind-bending stuff or the occasional nightmare logic. HJ asks, how do you have your steak, Jeremy? I usually will get it medium. As a kid, I always got it well done because that's just what I heard people order it. And then when I heard people talk about, getting steak rare, I was like, ooh, that's gross. But then after growing up and trying and enjoying sushi, I have felt that while I probably wouldn't order a steak rare, to order it medium. It doesn't need to be fully cooked all the way through. I'm like, yeah, I can work with that. So medium is usually how I go. Byron says, it's a tough balance. I'm an execution over innovation type of guy. A well-done story is well done regardless if it's been told before. But quite often, if it's too by the numbers, it fails in execution. I would say that I agree with that completely. I mean, that's where the steak idea comes in. For me, a story that is just very, I'm trying to think of a good example. You know what? The latest Predator movie, Prey, I don't feel that they reinvented the franchise. The twist on Prey was that where the Predator tries to fight and hunt a culture, people of hunters in this Native American tribe, it overlooks a woman because the tribe themselves do not respect her as a warrior. They don't view her as a threat. So the creature doesn't view her as a threat. And underestimating her is what allows her to actually hunt and kill this creature successfully. That I'd say was the innovation on the premise. But that said, it's a by the numbers Predator story, but it's steak. It's very well executed. And also it's steak on a budget because it doesn't have all these huge blockbuster special effects. Like there's a scene when she's hiding from that bear and the bear is trying to get at her, and they just have her hiding under a pile of wood. And you see pieces of the wood getting ripped off across, but you don't actually see the Predator there. And then you don't see the bear, and then the bear gets killed by the Predator and you don't see that. I didn't feel cheated by that. I felt like that was good suspenseful visual storytelling. It happened to be that it saved on the budget of not having to do all the special effects for showing this sequence. But I think that is good storytelling, is where you, instead of being constrained by budget limitations, you create drama and suspense. So that to me goes back to what Byron was saying about execution. I would definitely agree with that. Another Hitchcock recommendation, Shadow of a Doubt. That's another one that I haven't seen. Like I said, I've only seen like maybe 5 or so Hitchcock movies, and I really want to make time to work through his entire body of work. I guess I'm getting caught up. Amar says, more power to you. I will let you try that sea urchin with eel sauce. Yeah, well, to me, Rick and Morty is sea urchin with eel sauce. It's that thing that you don't quite know if it's going to work, and it tastes weird, and you've never had it before. You're like, what is this? My wife does not love, she does not have any love for Rick and Morty. She still is like, I don't get how you think it's funny. She's like, more power to you, not for me. Which is weird because she loves Archer. She loves Family Guy. It's not like she doesn't like animation. But yeah, Rick and Morty, she's just not down with. So it's like, I got to roll solo on that one. Frenzy, more Hitchcock movies. Yeah, Frenzy's on the list. I'm going to have to work my way through all of that. I think I'm going to just get caught up on these last comments here, and then we're going to call it a day. Because now we're just hanging out and chit-chatting, which I'm down with. That's cool. We're having fun. But I'm going to wrap up here with this. Not with this comment, but I'm going to wrap up going through the rest of the comments. We'll leave the drawing for next week. So Amar says that's what made the old Nosferatu so creepy in comparison with a lot of modern vampire tales. Yeah. I saw Nosferatu. I've only seen it once, but I saw it in I took a film on horror a class on horror films when I was in college, and Nosferatu was one of the ones in there, along with The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a horror film, but it's not a particularly scary horror film. But it's an old black and white silent film, much like Nosferatu, and very much worth taking a look at. Another German expressionist film. Amar says a lot of German filmmakers use that technique. Let's see here. And James says, right, like the tentacles in Dead Space. Yeah, you know what? I've never played Dead Space, but I'm very familiar with the game because I remember when it came out and the sequel, and I kept watching the trailers, and I was like, ooh, I want to play this so bad. But I have stuck with that whole thing of not playing games just so that I can get time to make things, to get artwork done. But also first-person shooters, I'm sadly one of those people who gets motion sickness from first-person shooters. So Halo, Doom, all of those games, I can't play them, or at least I can only play them for about 20 minutes at a time before I start getting a headache. So it's unfortunate. And yes, I know the Amar says the 1922 version of Nosferatu is what I'm talking about. Yeah, F. Murnau, the director. I'm surprised I can remember that because I haven't watched it since it originally came out. Let's see here. James says it helps with stimulating the imagination, though. I agree. There's all these great stuff to just having a piece of something, like when we were talking about the tentacles in Dead Space, just seeing the piece of something that is really creepy and having to imagine the rest. It's making the story interactive for the viewer or reader, where their brain is literally now engaging in the story by imagining the other half of it. Let's see here. Amar says, yeah, the subterranean and underwater creatures I find to be the most terrifying because they're the most alien and unfamiliar. He says, I can imagine having blood coming out of my food. It's too close to acknowledging our semi-cannibalistic or cannibalistic nature for some. Well, I mean, I'm of the type that I actually like to be reminded that, not in a twisted or sadistic way, but when I'm eating an animal, to know that I'm consuming another living being. I think that it makes us more thoughtful about our choices. That I have to recognize. I mean, in a way, it goes back to the idea of giving thanks, prayer before you eat, which, it's not just the pilgrims. I mean, lots of cultures, Native American cultures, First Nations people, often, giving thanks to the animal itself and to the, forgiving of itself to sustain people. And I think in a way, trying to disavow the fact that we're consuming other living beings is to deny the circle of life. I mean, even when we're eating plants are living beings. I mean, yes, they don't move around on their own. They don't ambulate. They don't walk and run, but they're still living beings, and we're still eating them. So let's see here. Amar says, I like the version of Predator, even though many did not. It was an interesting take. I think, are you talking about Prey? Because yes, that's the new version I'm talking about. One where it was a Native American tribe that's being hunted by the creature, the predator. And James says Nosferatu is over 100 years now. Hey, public domain, get at it. Let's see here. And Byron says Dead Space is third person. That might be one of the reasons why I was really tempted. I'm trying to remember now. It's been so long since that game came out. Maybe I'll go back and watch some gameplay just to see if it's something that, I mean, last thing I want to do is get caught up. I miss gaming, but I turned my back on gaming so long ago just because I was like, the hours I'm spending, I already do not spend enough time drawing and writing as it is, that I was just like, I kind of had to forego. I've foregone all hobbies to just write and draw. Like, that's my hobby. That's what I spend my time doing. I go, I work, I spend time with my wife, and then I write and I draw. So, I don't get to play games anymore. I used to play guitar. I don't play guitar anymore. All these books that I talk about buying, which are part of the making art, but I don't read them as much as I should or as quickly as I should because, again, the writing and the drawing. So it's a whole thing. If I were filthy rich, then what I would do is I would spend my days writing and drawing, and then I would have more room for family and for more hobbies and try to live a more well-rounded life. Right now, art is the monster that consumes everything. I am its prey. To wrap up with what Amar says, yes, Prey on Hulu, the prequel. Yes, that was a great one, and I would like to see more of that. I mean, shit, can you imagine Predators versus Samurai? That would be some shit. That would be some shit. I want to see that movie now. I want it to come out this Halloween. That would be the dopest movie ever. Predator versus Samurai. I think we all want to see that. You know what? I might do a piece of fan art just because it's just now I can't stop thinking about it. You know what? Hanging out with you guys is great for creativity because the back and forth and just bouncing ideas off of you guys and talking about stuff. I mean, like a painting that drives people mad. Predator versus Samurai. I mean, I find it hard to believe that someone hasn't already done that in a comic because there's a lot of Predator comics. But even if they have, it still doesn't mean I can't draw a piece of fan art of it. So, but oh, here we go. Here we go. Amar, I would like to see that versus Zulu warriors as well. Yes, Zulu, some Maasai warriors. Hell, imagine the Predator just keeps going to Africa and getting their ass whooped by different tribes until they're like, we gotta find some people we could beat. That would be interesting. All right, guys. So on that note, don't forget to hit the like button. Wait, HJ has one more comment in there I want to throw up. He says the new Predator Badlands has cowboy aspects, I'm pretty sure. I did not know there was a new Predator coming out, but I think they should. Predator is one of those franchises, they should just keep going. Every time they've got a new concept, they should have another one come out, because I think it definitely has legs. I haven't gotten sick of Predator movies yet, so I hope they keep coming. So on that note, if you enjoy these live streams, we'd like to get 2 bonus live streams twice a month, and they are extra long, 2.5, sometimes 3-hour long live streams where we do deep dives into some of the best art books around. We call it Art Book Study Group. We do that twice a month. We had one last week. We're going to have one next week. We do a Monday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you miss them, you can always watch the replays. And if you sign up now, all the replays are there. Hundreds of hours of educational live streams. We're doing deep dives in some of the best art books around. You can watch those for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Links in the description. And you also get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share talk, feedback, works in progress, just general sharing of art, shop top. And you also get access to a digital archive. You can read all of my comic books online. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morningstar. It is a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, and more, even photo reference, pretty much show you how I put the entire comic together. So you can check all those out. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, there's book flip-throughs of all those books. You can see what's inside before picking them up. All right, guys, it has been a blast. It's always fun to see you, always fun to hang with you. I appreciate the feedback, the stimulating creative talk. I think I'm going to sketch out a quick Predator versus Samurai idea for a piece. All right, guys. And James says, read them all. Thank you, James. I appreciate that endorsement. All right, y'all. That's it for now. Go be creative.